Welcome to the 40th episode of Nerds and Friends. We have John Bennett joining us today to talk about his books. Thank you so much for joining us, John.
Hey, no problem. Glad to have you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. Glad to have you here. So tell us about your book. I saw in the email. Remind me of the title again.
It's called The Path of a Titan, The Proving.
The Proving. I like that subtitle.
Yes. Long story short, in a quick little sentence, it's about a boy who never gives up on his dreams, and that's really the big punch that I wanted to do when I first made the book. Is I wanted to make an inspirational book that young readers and older readers alike can read, and they could be like, wow, if he could do it, I could do this, or I could do that.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love when you go in with like a theme you want to impart to the audience. Mm-hmm. I think that's really, really cool. So tell us more, kind of a setup of where this hero's journey starts out. Like, what's kind of the setting that our main character finds himself in?
All right. So the main character, his name is Carson Paul. He's at the beginning of the book. He's 16, and he lives in a town in Harmony, and Harmony is a territory within a new world that is called Tyke, and Tyke is, let's say, humanity's new hope. So, backstory: Earth doesn't work out, and explorers they go to this world called Tyke, and then it's 1,000 years into the future. So it's not like the beginning of civilization is the continuation of it. So
that's cool.
So civilization is already, it's already like in motion. So there's 4 territories, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The main story is Carson. He his journey is to become a Titan, and a Titan is a soldier in the military. So
that's cool. No, that sounds like a fun journey where you can really start, because like when I decided I was going to join the Army, I know my little backpack gives it away. I was around that age of like 16, where I was like doing junior ROTC, which is actually where I met Caleb here, and kind of getting into that, and so deciding that I wanted to be into the military. So it sounds like you picked the right age to show his arc of joining this military unit that I assume defends this territory of Harmony, right? Oh, there's more.
No, not necessarily at all, really. It's a world military.
Cool.
Yes. It's a world. It's like a military police, and that is what runs the world on top. And then they follow a sovereignty, just a king, let's say, in other words. And that's what the military is. The military is it's a global police force. Oof. So he wants to join into this because this is like his dream. But not only that, so on top, so instead of colonels, there's called Alpha Titans, and there's 4 of them that are in the military. So one of these Alpha Titans happens to want a secret technology that Carson's father is in development in. So this Alpha Titan then steals the technology from his father and arrests his father.
Oh.
So yeah, so Carson's his big push to be to get into the military is to, once he gets into the military, then he's going to be able to find the resources and the capabilities to find his father and try to rescue him. So it's kind of like an inside job. It's not like,
cool.
I want to get in so I could, figure out, a way to save my father.
That's so much cooler. I love that.
Yeah.
That's really cool, because then he has this like secret mission that drives him that he probably can't share with a lot of people.
Exactly.
That makes for a really cool dichotomy there. I love that.
Exactly. And now, like I was saying, he's from Harmony. He's called a Harmonian. Now, Harmony is actually the outcast to the world.
Oh.
The military is actually based in the capital territory called Alana. And Alana-kins, they don't like Harmony. They don't like Harmonians, and that's like a backstory that will be filled in the gaps throughout the series. But Harmonians aren't allowed in Alana. So Carson, being a Harmonian, trying to figure out a way to get into the military is actually it's actually like a charge for like treason.
Oh,
So he's really going into he's really going into a bad situation if he ever gets caught.
Sounds
yeah,
like it's very much like against all odds, right? He's trying to go after it.
Yes, exactly.
that sounds really cool.
Mhm.
That sounds like a really thrilling, like science fiction adventure.
Yeah. That's what it is. It's a science
That's
fiction
what it
adventure.
is. Well, heck, I want to read it now. That sounds awesome.
Yep.
Well, tell us about your writing process, John. Like, is this your first book, or is this have you written other books, and kind of what was your process of bringing it to life?
Well, I mean, when I was a teenager, like 12, 13, 14, I made little comic books and I drew them and whatever, but they're not published. But no, this is my first book. This is my debut novel.
Congrats.
And the writing process, it simply just started as an idea to get the comics back together. And I realized that it was just, not in the, it just wasn't for me. So I got a notebook, started writing down, places, people, who started very, very small. I actually started writing the other territory, Dalton, and I was just like, oh, what's Dalton? What can they be famous for? Oh, let's say they have a volcano. All right, whatever. Next page. Boom. What's Alana? This, and this, and it just kept growing and growing and growing and growing until this is what I have.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
I've started with a similar thing with world building for my books, where I kind of build the fictional world and then start thinking what elements do I want to explore for the story, and where do I want the characters to kind of go throughout that world I've created. So that's a really neat way to do the process.
Yeah.
I have a question on that, because when you're building something from scratch, essentially, how do you keep everything all together? Like, how do you make sure you aren't like pulling out wrong, items, or like messing up the storyline, or like, oh, this actually can't happen in that world? Like, how do you keep it all in the same kind of plane or storyline?
I go through my book. The first book, I went through it at least 15 times before I brought it to my editors, and I hit that that wall where it's like, oh, that doesn't make sense, or oh, I can't do that. This happened and this happened, and then I have to go back and fix it and everything. But a lot of scrap pieces of paper. I have a lot of notes written down. I have a lot of things typed up on my phone. And it's just a lot of like bullet points and key points and notes and stuff that I use. It just I don't know. When you're so passionate to write your own story and just make it as good as it can be, it sticks. At least for me, like, it sticks in my head.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, so I got to ask, when you wrote the book, were you like a plotter? Like, did you have an outline going in, or were you kind of a pantser where you're like, I know this world, I know all the elements, I'm just going to kind of write my character story and see where it goes? Where'd you fall on that spectrum?
Well, that was actually one of the biggest things for me, is trying to find, like, what is Carson's driving point? Like, yes, he wants to find his father, but like the project that his father makes is called Project Spine. And what the military wants it for is, well, Carson's father makes Project Spine to make people smarter. It's a little nano chip that gets put in your brain, and it sends nanobots up to your brain, and it makes it's overall, in layman's terms, it makes you smarter. What the Alpha Titan, Robert Fox, what he wants it to do is he wants to send nanobots down into your body to create superhumans. And yeah, so I'm sorry, to go back to your question. Project Spine was the big, thing to keep the plot, to make the plot go.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense. That's kind of the origin of the story, plus the coming threat that we need to prevent is these super soldiers and the military having too much power. That's a really cool threat for the main character to fight against.
Yes, I try to have a lot of dynamics in it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to jump ahead and get spoilers, because I can't wait to read your book. It sounds really cool, but I assume there's some kind of discourse about when you have the military functioning as a world police and kind of being almost an occupying force in their own territory, how that can kind of go poorly and have lots of corruption and like injustice and stuff. Do you kind of delve into that ever in the story, or is that, am I reaching too far ahead?
You are reaching, yes, yes.
Yes.
The first book, as the first book, as the subtitle says, it's simply just the proving, and the proving is like a pre-trial before Carson even goes into the military. So the second book, I don't want to have any spoiler, but the second book broadens the spectrum of the world. But the first book is simply just Carson getting to where he wants to get to.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool to make it really, then you can focus on the character's psychology and the struggles he goes through for this proving trial, I assume. So that sounds really neat, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, the first book is, yeah. So Carson also has a little sister that kind of joins him in his journey. Her name is Kylie, and she's a little couple years younger than him. But now she's a smart one of the group. She's the one that she's the only reason why Carson gets as far as she does, because of her intelligence.
Nice. That's cool.
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. Well, what's your kind of writing routine look like? I'm just always curious, because a lot of our listeners are aspiring authors. And so, we've had people on who talk about they write in the evenings or the mornings, or just kind of like, what's a good day of writing look like for you?
Well, I'm a night shifter. My regular job is I work 10 to 6, 10 at night to 6 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah. So I normally wake up around like 12:30. I'll have my coffee, sit down, type for a couple hours, go to the gym, come back, do a little more writing. Then my wife would come home, we have dinner, and then it's off to work. On the weekends, I try to get a little more done. But yeah, that's a couple hours a day. Just try to get it in. Do a chapter here, a chapter there.
That's awesome. Yeah, and if you can do that consistently, you got a book published. That's so cool, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
And you mentioned you mentioned your you reviewed that book like 15 times to make sure everything was cohesive, things like that. Like what from the first, keystroke to publishing, how long did the whole process take you with this first book?
About a year and a half. I believe I started in June of 2018, and I was able to publish on April 3rd, 2021, 4321.
Oh, nice.
Right.
That for someone's first book, that's really fast. Like, that's awesome, man.
I mean, I guess, yeah.
Well, most people on our podcast answer, they're like 3 or 4 years is usually what they say for their first book. So that's really cool, man.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
I was curious, like, do you do revisions? Like, do you go back and do chapters at a time, or do you kind of revise as you go? What's kind of your revision process?
So I print out page by page, and if I could show you, I'll just go in with a pencil and I'll mark it down, cross out things, write my little notes, and then finish the chapter. I'll finish the whole book, place it right in front of me, do the typos, and fix it, start all over again.
That's smart. That's really cool.
Keep going, and I'll just keep going. And the first book took me a good couple times before I was like, all right, I like this, I like the story, I'm confident with it. And then I was able to send it off to my editor, which is actually my wife. And she
nice.
And she got it in her hands, and boy, let me tell you, she gave me the works. She was like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. You're missing a comma here, so many missing commas.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, in that revision process, did you, like, each time you went through it, did you go through it with a specific purpose? Like, first one was like story flow, second one was typos, or was it just reading it through and finding things as you went?
It was just reading through and finding things as I went. Like, I was trying not to be an author. I was actually trying to be a critic, and I was really hard on myself. I tried to make everything as perfect as I could, because I'm giving it to a perfectionist, my wife. Who,
That's good. That's awesome, man.
Yeah. Being an indie writer, you have to learn how to do things. You have to learn how to do all traits of the trade. And it's a process. It's a process to learn it's like going back to high school and actually listening in English class.
Yeah.
And actually trying to, figure out grammar rules and quotation rules and, proper formatting. It was hard. It was hard. It was a process, but I gotta say, it gives me, it made me the person I am today.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool.
Maybe what I am today. Yes.
Yeah. No, it's I think a lot of people don't realize how much work goes into making a fully published book. Like there's so many steps you got to go through.
Oh my God, so many, especially if you're trying to do it all your own. Like, so anybody can write a book, send it to an editor, pay for every part of the book. But when, you're on a budget and you got to do things yourself, the process is a lot harder.
Yep. But it's worth it, because when you hold that like paperback copy in your hands for the first time, it's worth it. It's the best feeling ever.
Oh my God, it really was. It really was. And actually, I'll tell you, I'm on my second edition of the book because, of course, I was doing it myself, and I got the first copy, and I was like, "Oh, that's wrong. It was formatted completely." Like I sent it to Amazon, and Amazon formatted for me, and they brought it back, and it was like font size 8. Yeah, the margins were horrible, and I was like, "Oh no!" So I had to learn how to format, and that was another, month of trying to learn how to format. But I got it, and I republished, and now I have my second edition with about like 50 some copies of the first edition out there. So if I ever become famous, those things can really, those things can be priceless.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Yeah. That figuring out the font size and the trim on Amazon was a challenge for me as well with my first book. Yeah, well, like my first book went out and I didn't realize it didn't have page numbers. I mean, they were on there, but like with the trim, they weren't in the printed version. So I had some people who read it and they were like, "That was a really interesting creative choice that you want people to read by the chapter and not do the page numbers." And I was like, "Yeah, that was totally on purpose. Absolutely." But so I've since remedied that, and so I'm in the similar boat with the second editions. But yeah, people don't realize little things like that are interesting workarounds you have to find.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, John, is there any for those listening, where can we find your book? I know it's on Amazon, we've mentioned. Where else can our listeners find your book? Because I'm sure everyone's going to want to read it after hearing this podcast.
For right now, my book is strictly on Amazon.
Nice. No, same here. That's where all my books are. It's the best place to indie publish, in my opinion.
It is. But for me personally, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, facebook.com/author John Bennett. Same thing with Instagram. If you guys want to like and follow me, I'm an open book. You guys can message me. We can talk. We can talk about the book. I'm working with my publicist right now. I'm going to get a fan page going.
Nice.
And I'll put that on my socials, and we can all chat and talk about the book.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. Yeah. And send those emails to us and we'll put them in the description of the podcast so people can just click and follow and add your Real Easy on there, because we really appreciate having you on here, man. We can't wait to follow you and see the sequels to your books, and it's awesome, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much.
Of course. Great talking to you. Thanks for listening to Nerds and Friends.
Take care.